One's life begins to change when their desires transform into concrete actions. You're listening to the Desire to Be podcast, where your desires for your life and relationships become your mastery. I'm your host, Devorah Goldberg, and thank you for joining. Welcome back to another episode of the Desire to Be podcast. Today's conversation is with a lovely woman, Devorah Mirsky, who I met when we were both attending a public speaking workshop with Rush Lowe. So each of the participants had the opportunity to stand up after the workshop and give a 2-minute life-changing speech. I heard Devorah's speech and I knew that I wanted to hear more. So I invited her onto my podcast for me to learn and also to bring her story to you too. Devorah, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Devorah. Thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
And for those of you who do not know Devorah yet, the other Devorah, she is a native New Yorker who now resides in Boca Raton, Florida, with her husband and 2 children. She is the host of the Digging Deep with Dev podcast, where she delves into topics ranging from personal development to mental health advocacy. Devorah is also a dedicated writer and passionate about writing awareness for mental health issues. All right, let's hop right in. Tell my audience, Devorah, about the day that you got your life-altering phone call.
It was back in 2019, which now feels like a decade ago. It was actually the end of first days of Pesach, and I was winding down. I remember exactly where I was, just sitting on the couch. I was closing like an Ami magazine and stuffed with matzah and all this Pesach products and me ready to go chill out on a Chol Moed trip. And my husband opens his phone, and immediately, a few minutes after he opens his phone from Motzei Pesach, he gets a phone call from my mom. He picks up, and I'm in the living room. I'm seeing this go down, and he's like, "Hello, it's my mom." And she says, "Put me on speaker." And immediately my heart palpitations start drumming in me, and I'm like, why is she saying put me on speaker? What's going on? And my husband puts my mom on speaker, and she goes, "Devorah, I have to tell you, Abba passed away." And in that moment, kind of like a slow-mo horror movie where everything just starts spinning and it's slow and you're like, am I alive? And basically, I run to the bathroom, close the door, fall down to the floor, and just start bawling my eyes out. And really, from that moment, it just took me to a whole journey through grief of losing. And at the time, my firstborn son was 7 months old, and I was 24 years old. So I was a new mom going through postpartum as well. I had moved to a new community, originally from New York. I had moved to Boca. So I was still settling in my marriage, in my community, being a mom. And then I lose my father, who was 55 at the time. So it was definitely a lot.
Before we go into what your mourning process looked like, which was unique and different than other people, especially Jews, and the mourning process we go through. But I want you to tell my audience about your dad and about your close relationship with him.
For sure. So my father, I like to say he was very unique. I have 3 other sisters, so there were only girls in my family. He had 4 daughters. And I think that when you're a father of 4 daughters, just from my perspective, watching my father, as a child, I think that there's like this really intimate love and protection. Like he's the king and we're his daughters. And he just wanted to protect us at all costs, through everything. And he also, I imagine, he was the guy that wore the house coat. He wore his expression on his sleeve. And I really think that's where I got my expression from. He was the softest speaking guy, but also just very expressive and never afraid to just throw out "I love yous" or "you're gonna do great" or "I'm so proud of you." I remember I'd come home from school, and he was like a wicked sandwich maker, like a foot-long sandwich, and he just finished putting the stick in the top, and I'd come in and he's like, "It smells so good, Abba." He'd be like, You want it? And like, he did not eat all day, had like a coffee, was ready to, and he'd be like, here, like, that was him just giving the clothes off his back. And I recall, like, even when I got to college and I was still living at home for a certain amount of time, and I would like have conversations with him at like 2 a.m. on the couch, just chilling and just talking to me as if like it wasn't 2 a.m. Like he'd be like, what's going on? How's your date going? He just wanted to be there. And even as a kid growing up, he was also so in our lives, like so present. He would like we'd be sitting on the couch, all hanging out, and his phone would ring, and it would be like on the couch where you could see like who's calling, and he wouldn't even like look at it, nothing. He would just continue the conversation as if nothing happened. And you're just like, whoa, like, and now as a parent, I'm like, hey, do that.
So
So
present.
yeah, very present.
Anything else that stands out in your mind about your relationship with him or something that makes him unique, especially after his passing, where you see, wow, that is a quality that I don't see in many people, but I had that in my dad.
Right. So I think among the many, one thing that really, it's just a memory that I'll never forget. I came from, I would say, a pretty average middle class family. And one thing, when I was engaged, my in-laws were coming to town. And it was literally like Thursday before they were coming to town. And I took a look at my dining room and I was so embarrassed because my walls were like crumbling. It was cracked. And I'm like, it just needs a fresh coat. I'm so embarrassed, trying to impress the new in-laws.
Hmm.
Father, I'm like, can we go to the store and get paint? Can we just like repaint? He looks at me, he's like, sure, let's go. And next thing you know, we're going to Home Depot, filling up our carts with like almond white paint. And we're sitting there all Thursday afternoon. Me and my other sisters joined in and we're painting the dining room wall as if like he wasn't preparing for his like, Maklutanim to come. Like, what? Like, does that? Like, he just stopped everything, got it on his hands and knees, and just
Hmm.
like, because he cared so much about my feelings. Like, oh, I want my daughter to feel embarrassed. Oh, she like here he like never cared about these things, but he was so in tune to that of like your feelings. And I think also like materialistically, like it never I remember the first time I started driving and I pulled out of the driveway and I hit the mirror, the rear view mirror, and it knocked off. And immediately I call him, Abba, I'm so sorry. I crashed the car. And he's like, hold on a minute. What happened? Are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. Just the car's not. And he's like, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You're fine. That's all that matters. Keep going. And I was like, whoa, like he did not care about the car. And I think also later on, just like another big story, a monumental moment in my life is, when you're 17, 18, you do stuff, you act out, you're a teenager, very normal nowadays. I can only imagine so much more. And so my parents, we used to go to the library and take out books. And so I had definitely gotten books that I probably should never had to begin with. And I the flip cover off the book. It was pretty not okay. And I didn't, want to get caught. And I remember I hid the book underneath my mattress as well,
Hmm.
like a whole, security. And of course, he found it. I don't know, he was in my room or probably my mom found it. And then you know, and I was sitting in my room, saw this afternoon, and he comes into my room and he looks at me and he's holding the book. And I'm like, oh my goodness, you found it. I'm mortified. Like, you just had that feeling. You just didn't want to let my father down. And he looked at me and he's like, Devorah, I thought you could do better. And then walked out. It wasn't, I'm so disappointed in you. It was nothing of rebuke. It was like a soft, like, huh, I thought you were better than that. Like, like you're great. Like, I
Yeah.
believe in you. Like, you're so much more worthy. Like, why are you reading this like schmutz? And that to me was like, wow, like he believes in my worth, and so now as a parent, even though I have young kids, like it hits so much more home instead of the yelling, instead of the rebuking, it's like just a quiet conversation of facts of like, I believe in you, you know? And I think that's like what he really instilled in me. And just one thing in particular, and I think I would love to share the story because I'll never forget it, is especially, being a parent now and seeing the hardships of wanting to give your kids more than what you actually can give them. Sometimes it's a real truth.
Hmm.
And I remember I had my graduation, my 12th grade graduation, and I was at the party, I was at, the school, and I was wrapping up and taking pictures, and I come home and my hair is done all nicely, and I change out of my gown into like a nice outfit, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to go get a nice meat steak because that's what you do when you're 17, 18. This is what people do. And you go to a nice restaurant and eat out, and your parents celebrate you, and you get a gift also. And so I'm prepping. I come out of my room. I'm like, okay, I'm ready. And my parents just stand there like, for what? I'm like, to go out to eat, to celebrate me. And my father just takes me aside and he sits me down. He's like, Devorah. And he had like the most calming, pure eyes. And I saw them like fill up with tears and emotion. And he's just like, I want you to know that I am so proud of you. I can't even put a dollar to it.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, mom and I just can't, you know, fund going out right now to a restaurant. It's just not the right time. And we want to, and we're going to. It's just not, we just can't right now, but we love you. So proud of you. And I want you to know that no piece of steak is going to define my love for you. And of course, I was 17. I cried it out. It hurt. But looking back as a young adult and as a parent, I'm like, yeah, yeah, I feel that. And like, I feel the pain that he wanted so much to give me the world. What parent doesn't? But the way he expressed it is like, I can, like, he set the boundary, but I felt the love. I felt the love, and nothing matched that. And so that really just stands out to me.
I'm hearing from all these stories that you had your dad's heart. He had your heart. You had his heart. And you can't put a dollar figure to it. Can't put a stake to it. Can't put a present to it. But throughout all these experiences, it sounds like you had the genuine him. You speak about Shiva at a distance. Tell us about your experience when you were sitting Shiva for your dad during COVID and what that was like.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I definitely went through a lot of emotions during Shiva, which naturally so, but it was definitely far from the typical Shiva, which we all know is, 7 days and families come in the house and you're never left alone. And there's family
Mhm.
bringing and people coming in and out and you just can't breathe. And maybe you need your space or you feel like you do. Well, I didn't have any of that. It was the height of COVID. My son was still a small baby, 7 months old. And everyone was in like pandemonium. Nobody wanted to go into anybody's houses at the time. And so what happened was, in terms of sitting Shiva, I was talking to my rabbi and my father's rabbi, and I decided that I had to make the decision to go get on the plane to go to the Levaya or not. And
Mhm.
step back and I was like, what would Abba want? He'd be like, like, stop, stop. I want you and the baby to be fine. Like, don't worry about me. And I'm like, Abba, you only die once. Like, I'm having this whole conversation in my head. Like, Abba, you want me to. And I realized, like, what would Abba want? He just want me to be safe. And I wanted to stay safe. And so I decided to stay. And in doing so, I sat Shiva alone, me, my husband. And I had one or two friends come by, but ultimately, I didn't think it was good for anyone to come over really. And so the entire shift, I was taking calls 24/7, back to back. And at some point, the way my father's Levaya just turned out was it happened, it was like in between the days of Pesach and Chol Moed. And so you're not allowed to do like Hafedas. And so I think one of my uncles got up to speak and one other person, and they had to cut it really short.
Mm.
And not only that is like, unfortunately, it was like a factory. It was like there were families waiting in line to go into the room and have their next funeral. And there was like fresh plaque being dug up. And I had watched my father get buried through a Zoom video, and I remember I had my cousin from Hollywood come, and she sat with me in my living room and watched it. And I remember at some point, like, my father was being put down in the grave and they were burying him. And he's like, Devorah, look away. And I was like, look away. Look, I was like, excuse me. Like, so the only tangible thing I have of my father getting buried, and you're saying, look away. And later on, I realized, it's just trying to prevent me from having more trauma, which is possible at this point. But that to me was like, no, I'm going to look, because that was the normal closure that I had within the normality of it all.
Mm.
And 2 nights into Shiva, I took a move and I decided to do a Zoom conference Shiva with my immediate extended family, which my father came from a family of 9. So you can imagine there's a ton of like cousins and aunts and uncles and nieces and nephews. Just another added thing is, so I think it's also different when you don't have any sons. And, there was no one to take the hierarchy of, talk for Abba and I, okay, I'm not a boy, I'm not a son, but who says that I can't speak and share the lasting impression of my father?
Right.
If not, then step up
Are
to
you
the
the
plate.
oldest in your family?
I am not actually. I am
Mm.
the third to oldest, second to youngest.
Mhm.
So I'm in the middle. I'm the peacemaker. I am right in the middle.
You're the
And so,
go-getter.
yeah, there was this strong intuition that was like, Devorah, do it. And so many people were like, how'd you get up and do this? And what I did was I had the Zoom video and I just started jotting down memories that kept flooding to me. And I just jotted down and I sat there and I told stories. And then I opened up the floor to my cousin to speak. Now's your chance, because if he's not going to have it this way, I'm going to create it in my own way. I'm going to make my own rules. And this is going to be the normal. And so it was. And to me, I think that was like my way of saying goodbye. Like that was the biggest gift. In fact, also, before the Aaron goes out of the room to get buried, the family had the last minute to put their hands on the Aaron, and that's when they say the neshama, the body, can still hear you, and it hears when you can tell it last goodbye.
Mhm.
And that's, I was watching on Zoom my father go down, and my mom called me and was like, Devorah, everyone's saying goodbye. Do you want to say goodbye? And I lost it. And I'm holding the phone, and I know she's putting the phone to his Aaron, and I'm like, this is wild. This insane. But something, I felt it. I felt like he was listening, and I was like, Abba, like, forgive me for everything. I just went for it. And so back to the whole Shiva thing is, I suddenly realized, like, wow, like God is so smart. Like 7 days right after you lose someone you love so much and the pain is so unbearable, he's like, go, 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 go. I'm going to send you people. I'm going to send you food. You're not going to be alone. I know you want to be alone. You're not going to be alone. I'm going to send you people. And suddenly I long to have my sisters nearby. I long to laugh and cry with family and friends. And I'm like, wow, like it's so true. And like, I was jealous of my friends who had lost family members and had gotten that care and presence. And so, I did it in my own way and it was what it was. But I will say it gave me like a new profound feeling for Shiva.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So incredible, everything that you unpacked there. When people go through sudden loss of loved ones, there's obviously some level of PTSD that they deal with after the fact. And many times, as you know and experience, many years down the line. Tell us what that looks like for you.
For sure. So I have this thing that I tell, my friends, we call it the grieving club, the club that nobody wants to join. And even the that aren't familiar with grief, I talk about this a lot, is just how people think like the first year is it. Like, oh, hey Deb, I'm checking in, or, they're thinking about you on the day of the yard site, or they're still sending you food and meals and taking care of your kids. But it's almost as if the second year is harder because the attention is fully gone.
Mm.
And it's not so much that like, oh, look at me, I lost someone, I need attention. Like it's so not about that. It's more that the second year is harder because in your mind, the Shiva is over. So it's like it's over. It's okay, your time is up. You mourned, it's a year, now go move on. And it's like, move on. I'm never moving on. Grief carries along with you. It goes along with you. I saw this clip and I thought it was perfectly well said, is a video of a woman saying grief really is a dot in the middle
Mhm.
and just grow around it. still the same size. You just grow around it bigger and bigger, and it's still there. And there's going to be moments when that dot like explodes or it's going to get triggered. And in terms of triggers, it's funny because people are like, you really don't know what triggers someone. And, it's like to be sensitive, it's definitely hard. I've seen both ends. I think, though, it's just inevitable and it's no one's fault. But I'll give you an example. I got invited to an old neighbor of mine. It was like Shabbos for a Shabbos night meal. And they were an older couple, but they had a daughter, and the daughter was the same age as me. And she was staying by them for Shabbos, and she had her two kids. And we actually gave birth to like our daughters, my second child, like 2 weeks apart. So we were literally at the same age, same everything, same stage of life. And I'm sitting at the meal, and her father, literally was my father's age, 55 years old, picks up the daughter. And now, mind you, like my daughter was like 3, 4 months at the time, like really small, new, yummy. And he picks up his daughter, or his granddaughter, and puts her on his lap, and is like, "Oh, delicious, delicious," and gives her a big hug and kiss in front of my face. Like, and I'm sitting there at the table, and I'm like, that's nice. And I remember I just left, after the meal, like I come home and I just like open the door to my house, like, tell my husband, "You put the kids to bed. I just need a minute." And I just sat down and I just watched it and I just cried. I was like, I'm so jealous of that. I'm not a jealous person, but I'm so like, how lucky you are. You get a grandfather who gets to pick up your mushy kids and squeeze them. Like, I waited so long for my father to have that. And it's like that envy of, I wish it was me. And so, and, a friend was saying, like, Devorah, that's not jealousy, that's grief. And grief is like a chameleon. It shows up as jealousy, it shows up as anger, it shows up as hurt and sensitivity and pain. It's very, very funky like that. And it's not, it was just something to feel. It's nothing that you can say. It's just something to feel. And also, like, even like, going to the grocery store, like, they come out of nowhere. Like, I remember like, one time I was at the grocery store just picking apples from the barrel. And one time I see like a little cute little girl, little bow in her hair, 5 years old, holding her big, strong daddy's hand, walking through the aisle. That's me. I'm little daddy's girl. Like, and I just like ran out of the grocery store crying. Like, it's crazy what could be a trigger. And that's normal. And you have to let it sit and ride with you, So
Yeah. I was talking to a woman who lost her daughter to cancer a few years ago. And when you mentioned the grocery store, it just reminded me of that. She said, she'd go down the grocery store and she would go down the aisle and see the food that she used to buy for her daughter that only her daughter would eat. She had other sisters, but she would only, she'd buy that specifically for her daughter, and she'd make a choice. Do I buy this because I'm feeling connected to my daughter now? Or do I leave this aisle and avoid it? And she could just be like reduced to tears because she was just exposed to something which she wasn't expecting to be a trigger, like you said, but it just came up. What do you mean when you say, I've heard you talk about there's something called there's a better place conundrum. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I pinned the term, coined the term, and this kind of all takes me back to the very beginning of the beginning stages of grief. That first year, I remember after Shiva, I had this conversation with a friend. She had lost a parent long after mine, her father as well. Well, actually a little bit before me, like a week or two before. And I remember calling her up and I'm like, hey, there's nobody else that's going to understand this except the friend. Like, there's nobody else. And like, let's see, Sarah, I'm like, Sarah, give me strength, give me chizuk, give me, because you get it, we're in this together, right? And she's like, oh, Devorah, don't worry. Our fathers are learning in Shaman together. They're in a better place. Like, this explosion went off. Like, I gotta call you back. And like, I hung up. I'm like, I don't know if we could be friends anymore. Like, don't worry, we're still friends today. But it was just like that moment of realization of like, I think I gotta go down my own path. I don't believe in that. Not that I don't believe he's in a better place. I don't believe of picking apart grief like that. I don't believe in shushing it under the rug, like
chucking it out.
The definition of someone being dead means they are no longer breathing and they are no longer in physical realm of reality. And they are in realms and their soul is elsewhere. By definition of what we know. we have theories, we have, okay, but we don't really know. And that's not to say he's in a better place, he's not, he's in pain, we don't know. But what I like to define it as, he's one floor above me. He's one floor above me. He's like my guiding angel, you know? And I really feel that it's almost like I tell my friends sometimes when I want to boast of how I'm special because I have a father up there. I'm like, I have a grief superpower. I have a guardian angel. You guys don't. So I'm good. Like I have extra protection up there. You got one father, I got two, you know? So I'll just like go so far to tell you this crazy story, which really implies that I really have felt my father being like one step away. When
Mhm.
my son was 1.5 years old, my son is like, he's 4 now, and he is super climbing the trees since birth. And my husband took him to the park one day on Shabbos with his little wagon. And I guess somehow my husband got distracted, and my little son, Mr. Independent, opened the gate, took the wagon, and waddled down the street. And next thing you know, like the whole show is in a frenzy looking for my son, and the alarms go off. And long story short, I had no idea until my husband later came home and told me everything's okay now. The honey's here, but he got lost. And what happened was really, there was two directions my son could have gone. He could have gone right, which was into oncoming traffic. Instead, he went left with the wagon in tow with a pacifier and bottle down this like narrow street that was calm. It was like an old people village street.
Mhm.
And a lady there found him, and someone in my community whose parents lived there found him outside and took him to her house, and he was okay. And my first thought, aside from being angry and having trust issues for the next 3 months, was, oh my gosh, your grandfather has eyes on you. Like, it was so clear. Like, of course, like Shem, but it's like you have a guardian angel, you know? And so it becomes like faith and a higher power becomes so much more evident in the concept of grief. I truly believe.
So it sounds like this is the relationship that you have now with your dad, and you see it on a more nuanced level and a more energetic level now that he's passed.
Yeah,
How has your relationships with other people evolved since your dad's passing?
I love that question. My favorite. When my mom had called me about my father's passing, we were not close. Our relationship was, definitely rocky and challenging. We were, very different personality. I resembled my father a lot. And, as a teenager, we definitely rubbed each other the wrong way. And I took that with me into marriage. And when I had left, it was kind of like, okay, goodbye, you
Mm.
know? So we were at the point where, I was exchanging mutual good Shabbos phone calls, but it was like a bare minimum out of respect. And when my father passed, I was barely talking to my mom. And so when he passed, my first thought was like, oh my goodness, I got to get my act together. I have one surviving parent. If I do not fix this, my kids will not have a grandparent to have a relationship with. That is scary. And we're not talking, God forbid, about abusive or toxic parents. It's just, old revenue, old garbage that needs to just
Right.
be that. And I just don't think I would have looked at it the same way if I hadn't lost a parent. And so I went to therapy. My mom went to therapy, and she's proud of that. I'm proud of her, and I'm proud of me for going back to therapy and, picking apart the pieces. And no relationship is perfect, but I swore to myself that I would never hold my children back from my mom. I would never put her through that pain, especially also now that I'm missing a parent. I work extra hard, and we're still mother and daughter. We still have our moment, but the
Mhm.
relationship tight. I'm like calling her now like too many times a day. Also, in terms of friendship, I would go so far to say that, I mean, I've always definitely had like a wide range of variety of friends between like Cetus to ultra modern to like totally off the beaten path. And I love that
Mhm.
diversity. But I think even more now, I like go to show and I look for that person that's off on the side because I'm like, they're cool. They probably have a story. I'm gonna go talk to them. Like I find so much meaning. I've always hated chat. I can't stand chat. I'm on my community chat because I just need to know about like pays off stuff and whatever. But I I even more so like despise gossip and drama. I'm like, I'm out. I'm out. You want to hang out with me? Text me. We'll have a one on one. I'm so
Mhm.
much more better one on one with people because I just value face-to-face communication. I value people in so much more of a higher place. Like I was always a deep thinker and a deep soul. I'm like, I very much feel like I'm 28 on the outside, but I'm like 42 inside. Like my best friends here are like 65 and we just like hang out and they're so awesome. But like really, and I think that that's played a big part is like when you get so close to death and losing someone, it's like, I gotta get real. I don't have time for this drama. Like I'm in it for real. You want real? I'm gonna lay it on the table for you.
I want to bring this full circle and understand from a community perspective, because as a community, there are many different people, different backgrounds, different experiences. When we have someone in our community who has experienced loss, what do you say? What do you not say? How can we care past that first year, past Shiva, 5 years down the line? What is an appropriate thing to say that shows that you're showing up? It could even be a statement, but let us know from your perspective.
I love that question. And I will definitely say it's not easy. You know, I think that first year is easier to send people those messages because it's more self-evident. But as time goes on, it's for sure harder because it's not like in your face. And I think also it, a big pet peeve of mine, which I discuss all the time, is I think that people believe, especially in my situation, like a young adult category, we're not 19, 18 anymore, living at home, you know, under the care of a parent. We have a husband and we have our kids. So it's like we have our own family. So people are like, they have a husband and kids. They're like, she's missing a parent, but it's like, no, what does that have to do with anything? What about holidays? What about Shabbosim? My husband doesn't have a father-in-law. Like, these all play into a part every time we go to my mom. He like doesn't have anyone to hang out with and learn and joke and go to show. Like this is a big thing. It's still so relevant. And so I think one of the biggest things is for sure, like around the yard site, people are aware, send a message. I'm thinking of you. I'm doing something or what, like, is there anything that you think I could do? Or I'm learning for him or, you know, those are amazing. I think it's like group 2 and group 3, which is the close friend group, of course, your friends that know you and your neighbors or people that are really in your life, very present. You know, it's important to be like, hey, I know the month is coming up or it's right before the week. I'm running into the Grove. I'm going to pick you up like extra chicken and rice for dinner, my treat, or, you know, like a little things like that, or just a thing like, I'm thinking of you. I think the I'm thinking of you is the best way to go because it's not like, you're not ranting off like, you know, a whole, I'm so sorry. I hope he comes back. You know, like you can go on with, I'm thinking of you, heart emoji, very neutral.
Yeah.
But I think that also is let your friends talk about it. If you have nothing, the best phone call I got during Shiva was one of my friends who just picked up the phone. First thing she said was, Devorah, I have nothing to say. Just tell me about your father. Tell me stories. Go. I'm listening. And I was like, wow, oh my gosh. And I think that's it. Give a space for them to speak. And if you want to even open the floor, you maybe you feel like you don't know how to get them to open up or do you even go there? They want. It's more painful to not talk about it than to talk about it, you know? And so I think that's just really important. And also, even if let's say you're not in someone's close friend group, let's say you're someone in the community and you know this person in your community who has gone through this a grief, a loss, send them a text. You build friendships that way. They say by being a good friend, you make a friend, right? And they're gonna be like, wow, leave me in my friend group, but like she wants to know about me and she curious. Wow, okay, you know. So yeah,
Yeah. And it is difficult to know the right thing to say. It is difficult to show up for other people in their grievances. We're kind of overstepping into their boundary, a very personal boundary, and we want to know what to say, how to say it. But it's always good to know how we can do things neutrally, like you said. It doesn't have to be so deep if you don't want to open up or hear them open up too much. Even just a simple text lets them know that you're on their mind, you're in their heart, and you're sending them good wishes, which is always appreciated and accepted.
for sure. Yeah.
What I love most about this episode is, when I go to a Shiva, and whether I know the person or not, I do like to ask the person, tell me about the person who passed away. How can I make my life better? How can I better myself from one story, two stories, a character trait from this person? And just hearing your stories about your dad, how he showed up like a genuine father and how much he impacted you, it really gave me some food for thought today, how I can better my mothering skills for my children and show up with more compassion, show up with a little more softer, a little more present. So I appreciate that. And thank you for sharing your story. Thank you
Or
for being so raw and genuine and open. If my audience members want to reach out to you, how can they do so?
they could hit me up on Instagram, send me a DM. That's digging deep with Dev. And
Okay. And how can they listen to your podcast?
it's on Spotify called Digging Deep with Dev.
Perfect. Thank you so much again, and best of luck with everything. Ah, what a great episode. Thank you for being here. I truly, truly appreciate you. I'd love for you to tap 5 stars and let me know what resonated. Be sure to connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn under my name, Devorah Goldberg. That's where I give you more content. That's where we're able to engage even further. Until next episode, stay safe and be well.